Okay, good. Thank you.
Well, I'll call the meeting to order. This is the City Council Budget Work Session for Tuesday, August 4th, 2026. We are starting at 6 p.m. This is going to be a session where council kind of works on budget. That being said, I think there are some members of the audience would like to take the opportunity to speak tonight before we kind of get started on the budget. And if you'd like to, please feel free to step up to the podium, state your name and your address, and tell us what's on your mind.
Hello, I'm Dana Mullis. My address is 103 Santa Fe Drive here in Baldwin City. My commercial address here is 707 8th Street here in Baldwin City. I am here on behalf of the Baldwin City Chamber of Commerce. I'm the executive director, as well as a small business owner here in downtown Baldwin City. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for the partnership and the investment that the city has graciously provided the Chamber for at least the last 10 years. I also want to sincerely thank the council members who reached out to me directly for the conversations that we've had. I know that there are no winners when facing difficult budget choices, and I understand the hard decisions that you have to make. However, a cut of this magnitude is a massive blow for a small nonprofit. The Chamber turns the city's investment into growth opportunities, events, and services that benefit Baldwin City as a whole, well beyond just our membership. When I reviewed the budget, I noticed that economic development as a whole is receiving the largest funding cut at 88%, while no other item absorbs a comparable reduction. Is there any way we can compromise to a more reasonable reduction than 53%? To be clear, the Chamber is not seeking any mill increase for our funding, and we do not want that for us or for our community. Furthermore, the city is forecasting a growth in sales and other taxes. So what is the strategy for generating that growth while cutting the investment designed to help local businesses succeed and drive local tourism? When we look at our neighbors, what this proposal is doing to the Chamber is simply not what other towns are doing. Comparable communities around us understand that economic development is a necessity, not a luxury. In Paola, the City Council directly funds their chamber to run major community events because they know it brings in outside dollars. In Eudora, the city manager designates economic development as a top priority because they know it protects the long-term tax base. Nationwide, 70 to 75% of local chambers receive public sector funding, and in communities under 10,000, the city government is almost always a core funding partner. While our neighbors are moving forward by investing in their business communities, cutting our funding by 53% tells the region that Baldwin City is stepping backwards. This also ties directly into the self-funding question. Complete self-funding is economically impossible in a town our size. Large chambers in cities like Lawrence and Overland Park can fund themselves because they have hospitals, manufacturing plants, and hundreds of corporate offices paying premium dues. Baldwin City doesn't. Additionally, I want to clear up the Main Street conversation. The Chamber did not casually abandon the program. When it was assigned to us, we were not given any increase to fund its operation. The staff capacity and travel required depleted our reserves and cost the organization thousands of dollars without a measurable return. Our board had many thoughtful conversations and ultimately decided that the structure wasn't delivering enough benefit to warrant continuing in that exact format. Especially since Main Street's structure has changed, it's become part of quality places and it lessens the exclusive benefits. However, the board recognized the value of the framework, so we still maintain the structure and the values and apply the work to the whole community instead of just downtown. Regardless of what happens, the Chamber remains the city's partner because that's what strong communities do. Thank you again to the council for your time, for listening, and for understanding how important this work is and why we want to continue to have the opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Jenny?
So name, address, Jenny Fish, 1604 Elkhorn Street, Baldwin City, Kansas. I am the owner of the Maple Weekly and the Maple Magazine here in Baldwin City. First, I want to say that I do not envy any of you in this position. I understand that balancing a city budget means difficult decisions. I'm here tonight because I just believe that I have one important distinction that has been lost in the conversation about the Maple. The Maple exists because of the city of Baldwin City. The very first conversations about creating this publication began with the city. The goal wasn't to help launch a business, it was to create something for our community, something we didn't have. A publication that would tell Baldwin City's story, strengthen communication, celebrate its people, and preserve its history. That's exactly what the Maple has done for this community for the past 5 years. I've heard the city's contribution being described as a startup business getting off the ground. I don't believe that's what the partnership has ever been. The city wasn't investing in a startup, the city was investing in a community resource. This has never been about funding my magazine, it's about partnering with a publication that documents Baldwin City's story. Every street improvement, park project, business, festival, and council decision becomes part of this community's history. History doesn't preserve itself. Someone has to tell the stories. That's what the Maple does. And if you would like exact details on the editorial components that the city does receive through the Maple, I'm happy to share that with you at a better time. Basically, I just want to separate this conversation very quickly onto the Maple Weekly, because they really are two different things, okay? I'm not asking for anything else from the Maple Weekly, okay? I don't want to change your mind. That's not what I'm here for. I just want to correct the record, okay? I've heard from multiple council members that the city couldn't use the Maple Weekly for legal notices because it was no longer subscription-based. That's simply not true. The Maple has remained a qualified subscription newspaper the entire time. We intentionally promoted free community distribution to maximize readership while continuing to offer paid mail subscriptions that satisfied legal requirements. The city administrator was aware of this arrangement. The city was eligible to publish these legal notices. They just, in the Maple Weekly, it just chose not to. Because this misunderstanding has continued, we've just simply decided to eliminate the subscription base altogether. However, the Maple Weekly will continue to serve our community in print and digital, with a lot more focus in digital, okay? I'd like to return back to the Maple Weekly, or the Maple Magazine, excuse me, because that's really what I'm here for. It's a small portion of the budget that is being cut. I think in the last meeting it was 12,000 was for the Maple, and that was a little bit incorrect, but it's all this ask is 3,000. And what I want to say this again. This is not my magazine. This is Baldwin City's magazine. Every issue is created by more than a dozen local writers, photographers, and contributors who share their time, talents, because they believe this community's stories matter. It's created by the community for the community. That's why I believe ending this partnership would be a mistake. Not because the city needs the Maple, not because the Maple needs the city, but because we are partners and we need to do this together. Websites share information, council agendas share decisions, social media announces events, but local journalism preserves history. You spend hours, hundreds of hours of making Baldwin City a better place. Doesn't that deserve more than a council agenda or a Facebook post? History doesn't write itself. It takes reporters, photographers, writers, designers, time, and resources. And that's simply what this partnership is asking for. Okay? And while I have you up here, I just want to say that I think it would be a huge mistake for the city to eliminate or reduce funding for the Baldwin City Chamber of Commerce. Okay, the Chamber is one of the strongest advocates for our local businesses. It promotes Baldwin City, supports community events, welcomes new businesses, encourages people to shop locally, and creates a vibrant local economy. Removing that funding sends the wrong message, not just to the chambers, but to every business owner who has invested their time, money, and passion into this community. I thank you guys all so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you for your comments, both of you. Greatly appreciate it. That being said, turn over to Russ.
Yeah, so just wanted to go over the documents that are on the screen as well as the handouts that you guys have in front of you. As we visited at the budget finance meeting, the last time we had our budget finance, Scott we talked through about what would an additional 5% cut do to the various departments in the general fund. And where would those directors themselves cut that funding from to help us try to get back into fund policy? So that's mainly what I'm going to be talking about this evening. We have some of the directors here as well to answer some questions. I sat down with them individually, and we kind of worked through them line by line to see, what they not necessarily were willing to give up, but what, didn't make the cut in a way. So, by doing that, so on the budget that I had proposed, on the 27 budget, our ending balance would have been $281,988. To be in fund policy, we would have to be the fund policy is the 15%. We would have to be at 686,601. So you can tell, there's a pretty good spread there. Now, on the budget that I had proposed, I talked about selling tax credits that we currently have that are available for us to sell. We have 10 years to sell them. So I think this would be considered the second year. We don't have to sell them all at once, but we have 10 years to fully sell them. Otherwise, they go away. If we were able to sell all the tax credits, that would generate roughly $385,000. If we can sell them, that's just those. That's a big if. But that would bring us up to $666,000 roughly and some change. So we would still be roughly a little over $20,000 under fund policy, but we would have made tremendous strides towards hitting that 15% fund policy goal. So one of the things is with the 5% cut, if we did the 5% cut and we left the mills at like 29.155, we would end the year at 491,382. So we're a lot closer to making fund policy. And if we were able to sell the tax credits, then we would be, roughly probably at 20%, having a fund policy balance, just guessing off the top of my head. So then we'll go into the different areas of where we looked at cuts for the additional 5%. So in the 01 administration fund, there's two areas that we looked at to potentially cut. A lot of these line items are pretty much set in stone. For our insurance, there's really no negotiation. The one line that we looked at was 2470, which is community events. I had it budgeted at 31,500. We looked at dropping it down to 28,000. Those kind of things are for community events, is like fireworks, like big hair on the square, those kind of individual things. The other one was line 2516, which is seasonal decorations. Currently, we had it budgeted at 36,750. This is part of like the Christmas lights. We cut it down to 15,000. The plan would be to have public works guys and electric department guys be the ones that would be hanging it instead of going outside to third party, which that's what we've been doing for years and years. Now we would have an upfront cost like the first year of buying the supplies, and then we would have to be storing them. So initially the first year we wouldn't necessarily see a savings, but then year 2, 3, and on, we would. Now, we would still, from time to time, have to buy replacement lights and those kinds of things, but hopefully it would be minimal in that regards.
So is the 15,000 remaining, would that be just for overtime?
No, the 15,000 would be to like get the lights out the gate.
Okay, so then that number would drop to zero.
Well, hopefully it would drop to zero.
It's not going to drop to zero.
Not gonna drop.
It's not going to drop to zero because there's always going to be something that you're going to have to replace no matter what. But it sure wouldn't be 15,000. But we would just have to use our labor in house for that to make that come together. So
And is that
for,
sorry?
is that for next year?
no, so
This year already under
we
contract, or
we do not have a contract
Okay.
for the Christmas lights. So this is something that we could potentially do for this year, which for this year we have it budgeted at 35,000.
So then why would we need 15 for next year if we can buy the lights in-house this year?
And that's another option too, to where I can make that come together and have that extra.
I mean, just saying,
savings.
if we got 36 or whatever for this year,
We could. Yep.
do we really need the 15 for next year?
Not necessarily.
So obviously, we have a lot to talk about and a lot of different line items, et cetera. I don't want to get in the weeds too much on one, but that's a professional company that does that, and they do a professional job.
Correct.
I don't know that I would expect people who don't do that for a living to give us the same result. So, I mean, it would be assumed that you would expect less of a
Correct.
scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the city guys can do just as good a job. But
Maybe. I'm not in the decorating business, so I don't know.
I think it would, they're definitely, in my opinion, there's there's going to be a learning curve with installing those lights. But I think once, they figured it out and got it moving forward, that they could, would be fine. But is it going to be better than what they were doing out the gate? No. But I think we would learn each year and build on that. And then, in return, that would save the citizens this extra money.
So, did anybody talk to the Public Works people?
So we've kind of just mentioned it, and to see, these are the 5%. To be honest with you, the 5% cuts to the budget is, in a lot of areas, very detrimental to the overall grand scheme of things of functionality for the city. But this is the way that I could get the additional 5%, because there's no other line items that we would be able to even do anything necessarily with to hit that 5% for each of those accounts.
So let's just obviously ask Russ to do this exercise so that we can see the types of things that we'd have to do to try to get into fund policy, i.e. spend less, right? And that's going to be a compounding benefit going forward. So, I mean, this isn't the final budget. This is things that they did a great job of just digging in and seeing what possibly could we stand to do differently to save some money. So,
Well, yeah, I think you're also looking at what would reality look like if we cut it.
yeah.
Like what? Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, correct. I mean, like we did spend, with the directors, I spent a fair amount of time with them. We sat down, like I said, and we went line item by line item and tried to talk through and rationalize what we truly could do and what we couldn't do.
Would that affect the flowers at all downtown and other things that, because I know we buy some of those from.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was just a part of that.
It's not in this area, but I will touch base on that later on.
the seasonal decorations are just the lights.
Seasonal decorations are just the lights, is my understanding. So that kind of takes care of the admin area. As we would go into the O2 Public Works account, This one is really difficult to cut. We are very razor thin in as far as funding goes in this area. The first item that we went to was 3330, which is snow removal supplies. We ended up cutting it $3,250 from where I had it budgeted at 15,750. You know, the biggest problem we run into is we don't know how many snow events we are going to have. So I just want to state that up front. The next area was the asphalt cold patch, which is 3340 line item, where I had proposed 77,500. We took it down to 50,000. That's where we were at this year as far as what we had put into the budget. My thought process with the budget is that with my part of the budget is that we're falling behind on the care and upkeep of our roads here in town, and I was trying to get an extra push to kind of we would not necessarily get caught up, but we would make some headway towards that on the maintaining of our roads.
Russ, do you know if we're allowed to use any of the Brick Street sales tax fund for repair of the brick streets that are in the proposed?
So we can use the Brick Street, my understanding is we can use the Brick Street sales tax for anything brick streets. So we could use it for replacing smaller sections,
Not repairing by a cold patch.
but not repairing by cold patch, no.
Gotcha.
So.
Thanks.
And then, you know, the other thing I had highlighted on here was the rock, sand, and chips, where, you know, we pretty much kept that the same. That was an area that we could potentially cut, but
It was cut from this year's budget amount, but cut in half.
it was cut from 20,000 from the 26 budget to roughly 10,500 for this year. So
Do we know where we're at on that right now? Because I know that it looks like 2025, the actual expenditure on that was 4,097. Are we anywhere close to that 10,500
So
that was budgeted?
so we're roughly, you know, like halfway through the year, and you know, as the year goes on and we have certain projects that we have, I mean, we're pretty much in my opinion, I don't know that we're going to have any extra left over at the end of the year for this, because we have several other projects that we're trying to fix and get ready for. We've had several water leaks in the past month. We've had, I think, right around 3 water leaks. So some of that rock is used to fill in those holes. So it's really fluid in that regards.
Gotcha.
So
Now, but let me ask you this, all the numbers that you're talking about and you're showing us here, this is survival mode, right? In a sense that this is just getting us by.
in my opinion, yes,
It's not, we're looking for the future of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. This is just getting us by.
So I think that, you know, this budget, if adopted, is basically just looking at today, and it's really not necessarily planning for the future. Correct.
Thank you.
As we would go into next year, you know, we would have to figure out a way where we're going to be generating, you know, more revenue coming in to be able to keep up with the cost of goods. Not saying that would take a mill levy increase, but it potentially could, for us to be able just to keep the same city services that we're currently utilizing. That covers the public works part.
How
Yeah,
how
go ahead.
does the Public Works Department feel about those cuts? Are they feeling okay, or?
Well, they got a lot of heartburn, but you know, we work through it together. I mean, it's not, you know, anytime, you know, you're taking a 5% cut off the top. I mean, it's hard. It's not easy, because there's so many variables that we run into as a public works department that we can't foresee, kind of like with the snow and weather events, because that's, that directly hits your overtime compensation, because you're going to be bringing guys in at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to take care of the streets so that they're ready for the folks to go to work.
Where does that come out of from the budget?
So that would be line item. It's the third from the top on the public works. It's 1110. So right now we have it pretty much at $6,300. So for 2025, our actuals were actually almost $5,800.
That was
So
what, for probably 23 inches of snow,
it
roughly.
it wasn't a bad year for us. I would say it was really a light year from years past. So I'll go on to the Parks Fund. So on the Parks Fund, where we would end up cutting on this would be line item 2531, which is playground equipment maintenance. We cut 400 from that budget. And then we came over to plant materials, which is 3,600. That kind of figures into hanging baskets, and those kinds of things. Now, our plan would not be to eliminate the hanging baskets as a whole, but we would reduce the number that we are currently doing to roughly to $3,200. And that, so in plant materials, that's, buying compost, that's mulch. Those are, the different kinds of things that what we would utilize in that area.
How many hanging baskets would that eliminate?
I think we were talking about going down to like 14, and I think we're at 21. We're at 21 right now. So we would go from 21 down to 15 or 14. We were kind of trying to figure out how to space it out to where it still encompassed the entire downtown area. The other one was where I'd put the $10,000 in the budget for Spring Creek Lake. We would have to cut that from the parks budget.
Hey Russ, real quick on 2531, I'm looking at the actuals from 2025. It says 876 for the playground maintenance or playground equipment maintenance. Is that accurate? It seems pretty low unless we just had like a perfect year where nothing in the playground ever.
So I think it was it was kind of one of those years where we didn't necessarily have to fix anything, but it's kind of like a bell-shaped curve. It's just you have your ups and downs, and sometimes you'll have vandalism of the different sites. I know this year we've had several areas of vandalism on our parks equipment, but I think as of right now we're pretty much we're probably going to be right at $5,000 when it's all said and done for the year.
All right.
The next department or account is the 04 fire account. If you look at the top line, 1102, that is where we put in the part-time employee that we had talked about at the last meeting. So as far as cuts for them, the area that we had to cut was on 4810. I had budgeted 25,000. And that was for replacement of the fire hose. Over time with fire hoses, they have to go through a certification process, and if they won't hold certain pressures, we can't utilize them. So over time they break down just like anything would. So we were planning on replacing some hose as well as some bunker gear, the gear that they would wear when they go into the fire. So we went from 25,000 down to 12,000 on that to make that come together to make those cuts.
My question on that, and being somewhat familiar with public safety, is decreasing the budget by what, 25,000 to 12,000, when we're discussing bunker gear. That's vital. That's what these guys wear and gals wear, and hoses. And I mean, for me, yeah, we'll save $13,000, but it's not going to help us on a $5.2 million lawsuit because we failed to adequately protect and provide those services and equipment necessary for those firefighters, knowing they needed to be replaced.
I understand what you're saying. The
I mean, that's near
problem,
and dear to my heart.
the problem that we run into with the fire department is most of the cost in the line items are fixed. So there's really no wiggle room. And, you know, I met with Chief Baker about this, and we talked in depth several times about this, of how to make it come together with the 5%, to make the 5% cut. And that was the only line item that we could do it. Now, does it make perfect sense? No. But that's why I have a hard time. The budget that I'd proposed was already pretty thin, and then cutting another 5% was on top of that was really hard to do. But I think it's something that us as city employees need to do, to look at the overall, to make sure that we don't have necessarily any fat on the bone. We are very good stewards of, you know, the citizens' money, and so that's where we came to on this one, because there's just the problem is there's just so many fixed costs with this department.
Well, on this one, I don't know, me personally, this is not to say anything against any of the other utilities, but as far as if we want to be good stewards of the citizens' money, the ISO rating that's going to get rated this year, is that right, Chief? Right. Well, yeah, the year that we're trying to create the budget for. So 2027, they're going to come in and do a rating that has the possibility of saving a considerable amount of money for everybody that pays any sort of insurance tied to your house or a home. I don't know if renter's insurance necessarily gets affected by ISO ratings, but I know that homeowner's insurance definitely gets affected by how equipped your fire department is to handle fires. So I think me personally, I think it'd be absolutely silly to cut those. So,
But that's also not a guarantee.
it's not a guarantee.
So
It's
you're gambling.
but with a little bit of a, you know, I don't have the bookie in my back pocket, but it's an intelligent gamble.
So that takes care of the fire department. When we look at the police department account, this one was just as difficult as any of them. If you look at 1101 full-time employees payroll, we have an individual that is going out on military leave for the year. So we would save his salary for that year, which would be next year. I mean, that's roughly 85,000. But that's a one-time injection. So,
And then
the thing is that next year we'd have to figure out where we'd get the 85,000 plus, because you're going to have adjustments and different things.
Well, and you guys might get hit when he comes back from military leave. He might be able to submit paperwork that says you guys need to cover comparable between what he's getting paid on military duty and what he would be getting paid with the city. And that's not, I think that's taxable income. I don't think that's BAH and everything. So we would have to pay the difference. So there's no guarantee that we won't have to pay at least
Correct.
a partial payment of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. You know, we came down to healthcare. There would be a little bit of savings on that, 5,400. Staff training, we looked at, you know, I'd proposed 18,000. We decided to cut it back down to 12,000, saving 6,000. We looked at janitorial services, which is line item 2521. Roughly that's, 70, almost $7,900 a year. We looked at just bringing that in-house to save that kind of funding. Computer supplies on 3120, as you'll see on there, we don't have anything budgeted for that. The custodian supplies, we don't really have anything budgeted. On my budget that I had presented on the computer hardware for camera systems, for events, we had budgeted 3,000. We completely took that out. Equipment purchases, we went from where I'd budgeted $19,845. We went to 13,000. So that saved us $6,845. That's roughly 115,000 in savings. A lot of these in this area are just like all the other departments. They're really fixed.
Let me ask you this, and maybe the chief can answer this. On this equipment purchase that would be cutting from 19,845 to 13,000, what equipment's being cut?
Those are not identified costs. Those are anticipated that we normally spend equipment, that we have no idea what will break,
Okay,
what we'll need to,
So we're not like, let's say, looking at tasers to roll over, we need new tasers, we need this.
we normally spend a certain amount of money. We anticipate all those costs going up. We will have to spend money, so it's kind of a misnomer. If you lower that number, I may overspend that number because we have to replace something without knowing that we have to replace it yet.
Okay, got it, thank
If
you.
I could say one more thing too. The military deployment is not a 100% guarantee. I do firmly believe he will be deployed, but there is always a chance that that deployment gets halted, delayed, stalled for whatever reason. So there is a possibility for that. Russ and I, looking at this budget, I mean, you're talking about the janitorial service that we do that in-house. That means I pay my police officers to scrub the toilets, do the floors, do all of that that a normal professional service would do for any building. So we're reeling that back in. Are these things that we want to do? Absolutely not. And I know you have tough decisions to make. In my department, to do a 5% rollback in my department is going to involve personnel. There's no other way for us to make that number. That's $110,000 out of a $2.2 million budget. And without cutting people, you will not get to that number. So if it comes down to that, I will resign my position to make that happen. You can't do it any other way. You cannot go with less police officers on the street. So just so you're aware.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Could we go into 06 pool account?
Before we move on, I didn't see the vehicle purchase.
There is no vehicle purchase in this one.
Okay. So we talked about in budget and finance, 125,000 mile rotation from 100,000. Is that part of that?
I can't make that work with cutting the 5%.
Right. My question is how overdue is that vehicle slated, and what's that do for the mileages on, it's a replacement, right? We roll them over.
It would be a replacement, yes.
My question is, if we move to 125,000 mile max before we replaced, by not purchasing that vehicle this year, are we still within that 125,000 mile range?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not.
So we're outside that without this purchase.
Correct.
Okay.
Again, this is, I think, a survival mode, when I'm looking at budget, but my thing about not purchasing a patrol car, I can see it 1 year, but the problem becomes if you defer it 1 year, then you start getting behind. And, before you know it, you're defer. Now your whole fleet is outdated, needs updating, maintenance, all that. So, that's just looking at it.
And what was the cost of that? Was it 80-some thousand?
85, I mean, you say 85,000.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you defer it forever. I think that's why we looked at changing the policy a little bit to where you keep them a little longer and you're rolling them less, right? And over time, there would be less new vehicle purchases over same time period.
I don't know how the chief runs his budget on these kind of things, but I know usually we looked at what car's the worst, breakdown issues, problems. Some you just get lemons. I don't care what you do to them, they're just lemons.
Yeah, we don't necessarily look at mileage because we could have a higher mileage car that actually functions better and is less problematic for us than another one. We work very closely with Public Works and their city garage, who does most of our maintenance stuff if it doesn't have to go out for factory work at the dealership. And we talk with them, what's our most problematic vehicle? So we have basically 8 vehicles. So if we get one a year, it's 8 years before we cycle a vehicle out. It's going to have a lot of miles on it already. You could say 125,000 miles and then you get rid of it, but you won't have the money to do that replacement. It's just one car a year. One falls off, we get another one. And about every 8 years, that car cycles out. Now with the Tesla, the electric one, we wanted to get rid of that one before the 8th year because that battery has a warranty for 8 years. But we want to cycle that one out sooner when it gets through year 7. So, but it's the most problematic vehicle, like what Jerry said, the mayor, excuse me.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
Then we would go to the 06 pool account. So on this, we would cut the budget on there roughly 10,000. That would come from line item 3550 and under chemicals. Basically, that would be for chlorine. So if you guys remember, we went to the liquid chlorine injection system. So we should be noticing a huge savings on that as we get into next year. So that would be an area that we could save some money on. That's the only thing that, as far as in the pool budget, that we could adjust. I mean, a lot of this stuff is all fixed, and it really truly has to be done to keep the pool open. So the next account would be the 07 court account. This is a really difficult account because you really don't know. It's all based on how many tickets, how many, if they're going to have a trial or whatever. We basically kept this roughly the same. There's just, I mean, I could cut stuff in here, but there's no telling, where a lot of stuff is truly fixed from one year to the next. This is an area that you don't. It depends on truly on how many tickets and how much court time that it takes.
What's Douglas County charging us now, Chief, for housing an inmate?
I don't have that committed to memory. It's actually one of the highest in the state, but I believe it's $230-some a day.
Right, yeah.
However, we do not have very many inmates that are under municipal charges being housed in their jail at the moment. But it is a fluctuating number, and we don't have control over that number.
I was just say, if we have to, that's what's going to cost us. I mean, there's nothing else we can do. We don't set.
You have no other option. If they have to stay in jail, you would pay the bill.
Thank you.
We don't have any in there right now.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You would only have to be in jail for a municipal infraction, correct? It would only be if they had municipal charges that they were in jail for?
Municipal only.
Right.
See, if we arrest somebody to have municipal and district charges, the state takes over with those. So the county pays that bill instead of us.
Yeah.
But if it's municipal charges only, that they're in custody at the jail, the city pays.
Is that common?
Yes. It is. Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
The next is the 09 economic development area. looked at where we could cut. There's really no cuts. We've made drastic cuts already in that area.
Where does the EDC land?
Well, EDC lands in 4007 in the economic development line. And see, that didn't even make my budget originally, so.
Is there any way that we could do the chamber, maybe not so drastic, and do it over a 2 or 3 year time?
Are you talking like completely phase it out over 3 years? Or are you talking
No,
completely just,
Just instead of such a, like a $20,000 hit to the budget for them, do something incremental, because let's say we take away 20,000 funding, and all of a sudden the next year we realize, from other places, it seems to have a compounding effect that go beyond just the $20,000 savings that we saved as a city, but seem to, we could see it reflected in sales tax, or we could see it reflected in the quality of life for citizens. People are complaining about, the things that are missing. I think phasing it out.
so yeah, I mean, that's totally up to you all as a body to do that. You could raise the mills, to be able to offset that. Or we would have,
Nearly zero out your fund balance if you don't.
I'm sorry, Matt.
This will nearly zero out your fund balance in the general fund if you do not cut that.
So let me have a bigger conversation first, if you will all join me. The 5% budget cuts get us to where in our goal to be at policy for the reserve fund?
400 and, you'd be at 491,000, which for that, you would have to be at 655,000 to be at 15%.
Okay.
So I'm not in favor of the 5%.
I'd like to reiterate too, that this is not a 5% cut. This is a one-time reduction in outflow that you will not be able to sustain. You're going to have to turn around and spend it next year.
Understood.
The year after.
Understood. That's actually going to help me
Yeah.
argue my point, I believe. But this is all in the rush to get to that policy, that reserve policy,
That is to bring us to get us closer to the fund policy.
which the tax credits would then.
The tax credits
push us
would
over the
then
finish line.
Put us over the finish line.
So I'm going to ask one big question. What kind of hurry do we want to be in to do that? It feels like we're in a 2-year hurry to do that, but is that even necessary?
So one of the things we got to think about is when we go out to long-term bond. We did a short-term bond for the different projects. When we go out to do the long-term bond, that will affect the rating.
How much?
I don't know. That's the $64 question. I wish I knew.
But that it would be a number, and if that number is not very scary, the difference between if we were versus what we're trying to do in a big rush.
I don't think this is a rush. Rush would have been doing this 2 years ago.
Well, it's today now.
You're functionally, operating at a deficit, basically. You're not in compliance with your own policy. You've already looked at, you've already been told, you basically will get a bond reduction. And I'm not saying it's going to cost money in the short term, but unless you address the fact that you're not spending enough to keep up with your costs, it's just going to continue to go that way. We can talk now about, catching up with selling the tax credits, and I absolutely think you should do it. But unless you address the year in, year out, being essentially almost upside down, you're not going to, you may buy yourself a couple of years till you're right back where we are now.
But you are chasing that difference between policy and where we're at now, that difference. If we were at reserve policy right now,
I'm just saying that
if we were at reserve policy right now, the cuts wouldn't have to be as drastic to stay even.
yeah, but you're still not addressing the fact that next year it's going to happen again.
Right.
Like,
No, it wouldn't, because
So the real issue
costs
is,
are never going to go. Your costs are never going to go.
I understand that, but we're talking about getting to the reserve policy. We're talking about the reserve fund. So some of these cuts do catch us up to the reserve fund. So right now, if I said the reserve is at 15%, we're within policy right now, that we'd have to make the same amount of cuts year after year, we wouldn't.
You're catching up to your reserve, but you're also cutting your services. So yes, you'll be caught up at lower service. Right? If you want to catch back up to your previous service level, you're still going to have to make some kind of adjustment.
Right, but that wouldn't be a 5% rate. Like, that would be a lot smaller of a climb.
But just remember that the 5% rate deal that what we're proposing.
We're not. I'm not.
We're not proposing this. This was just an exercise for us to go through to make sure that there's no fat or meat on the bone.
It's a good exercise because we can forecast with a 5% cut how much closer we get to that reserve policy.
Correct.
And it's still short. So what I'm saying is, if we were to get, and the tax credits could magically solve a lot of these problems. If you were to get at that reserve policy, it's not this scary 5% problem that we're looking at here. Look at everything we're cutting in every department. It's a smaller series of cuts.
Okay.
Correct.
But I look at this as just, again, a temporary Band-Aid. We're just kind of hoping that we get these tax credits sold and not planning to get ourselves out of the hole the next year. And I know probably the council thinks I'm the member of the doom and gloom, but I tell you what, we also got to think about what's the state going to do this year if they come back with this 3% budget.
If they cap the property tax deal, that could tremendously affect us. As if they cap it at 3%, like which they were pretty close to this year.
And that's something we have to consider. And I'm sorry, I'm going to deviate for just a second.
No, I made
Thank
my point.
No, thank you, Corey. Matt, we pay Baker Tilly money every year for your advice, for you sitting there. Tell us, in your opinion, why you're going to earn your salary here. What's, in your opinion, the best? I see a mill to try to get us headed the right direction.
I still think if you're going to do a mill, I'm going to come back next year and say another mill. And until you get to the point where you can operate without having to reduce services. And even before Russ has cut, gone through this 5% exercise, we're already not keeping up with road maintenance the way it needs to be done. We're not keeping up with, funding your community events the way you would want to keep them done. You're not keeping up with, staffing the way you need to be staffed. So, I mean, you're already you're already lean before we even go through this exercise. Okay. And look, I understand nobody wants to cut anything, but and I know that this is only the second year I've gone through the budget with you guys, but Ben has told me repeatedly that this is not a new conversation, that this has been years. He's been recommending better funding, especially the general fund. And I know that it hurt last year because you had to make an adjustment to your electric utility, and we're going to have to make adjustments to the wastewater and water utilities again. But at least those problems are solved, or at least the electric utility has been taken care of. That is not a upside down operation anymore. But now we're talking about police, fire, and all your other general fund operations. You can continue to, stay lean for a couple more years, but again, it's already started to affect your operating position.
Thank you. Thank you for the council letting me entertain that.
so my perspective is, to your mill discussion, is, we're in this situation because the assessed valuation only went up 4.7%. That's half of the general fund. That caused this issue. And if it had gone up 9-10% like it has the last 3, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We should be, but we probably wouldn't be. The concern is what happens next year if we get capped at 3, or if it's another 4 or 4. It's going to come down to two things, and you mentioned it. Either our services are going to take some level of a hit, or we're going to have to raise the mill levy and the cost of living in Baldwin. It's that simple in my mind. It's more complex than that, but it's those things that we have control over: service level and mill levy. And that's a function of the assessed valuation. So, I mean, we're here because of that. And I think at the point, so this exercise, I appreciate you guys going through it. I think part of it was to really look at how tightly are we running the budget, and if we have another 5% increase or we get capped, what are we going to do? You got two choices: service levels go down and/or mill levy goes up. That's it. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I think it is a Band-Aid this year. If we don't do anything, I'm not necessarily advocating for all these additional cuts. But I think the council needs to be prepared to change our revenue through the mill levy at some point to maintain what the departments are saying we need.
And I know it would be just a Band-Aid for next year as well, but we also would have a vacant building to sell too.
Yeah.
To help with the general fund.
You're thinking, I can tell.
I'm just, I think it's just a very broad conversation that needs.
But I think it's necessary we have it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I know. I'm looking at the clock. We have 4 minutes. and I start talking.
So wait. To that end, I mean, I don't think we can take all this input in and make a rational decision on any of this, hearing it for the first time. We've got one more meeting.
And I didn't take it that you guys would take all
Well,
this
I mean, if we-
and make a decision tonight.
Right. So we have one more meeting. I think we need to have one final workshop and kind of have this conversation to get to, and it'll be 14 days ahead of the budget hearing, so we still have time to, publish it. But I think one more session to have this discussion around moving forward with one of these budgets that's been proposed or a form thereof.
Or a form thereof, but yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, so if everybody's good with that, I think we need to have another last workshop.
Can I ask one thing before we decide on that? I mean, I think we also should have another workshop. At that workshop, I would like to present a multi-year scenario that assumes you sell all those tax credits and assumes you sell the building.
I like that.
I wanted to. The reason I want to do that is I want to show you that it's not going to fix everything long term.
Okay.
There's going to need to be some kind of adjustment.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, our biggest expenses are wages, personnel costs, and those are not one-time charges.
And I'm not saying the building's a fix all. I know it's a Band-Aid.
Look,
But-
I absolutely want you to sell those tax credits. If you have property you don't need that's not making you money, get rid of it.
Well, if it's just going to be a storage unit, it should go.
Yeah. But I mean, take advantage of that. Build that fund balance. Get yourself where you're looking good. But I mean, I still think there's going to be structural changes that need to be made.
Got 2 minutes before we have to start council.
So real quick, for the last session that we have, do we want to go the opposite direction, 1 mil, and see what things would look like hypothetically if we increased? What would we do with that 1 mil?
So roughly like with 1 mil, you're
$60,000.
looking at $60,000.
Yep.
So.
Matt, I like your, if we could see that scenario, because that's the one I'm trying to struggle with in my head. How bad of a problem? We all know that we're not as where we need to be, but how far back are we?
We'll make logical, reasonable assumptions.
Right.
So I'm not going to scare you with a Tuesday scenario.
Right. No, I'd
you
appreciate
just
that.
When
it's like-
when are we planning on the next budget meeting?
Everything you said is
And
negative.
we asked you to do it, so thank you.
What? Next council move 6 o'clock again?
We could talk about it.
Okay.
I'm happy to come up for special meetings or promote in whatever for special meetings. Just wanted-
Be the 18th meeting.
18th?
We have a lake meeting that night.
And we've pushed it back. I can see if we could,
We could do the 11th, which is a Tuesday, the 11th, but I'd have to see if the community center's open.
I don't think I'm going to be available that day.
Okay.
I have that in here
I
already.
really like doing them before the council meetings. That way you're not
Yeah.
two evenings instead of,
Exactly. It's more efficient.
Even if we had to come in at 5 or earlier, like I'd rather do it all in one day instead of having 2 separate Tuesdays.
We could do the 18th.
18th at 5 or 6?
I know our lake committee can't meet at 5 because we got people coming from work. So 5 would not work for the lake.
No, but we could do the budget at 5,
Yeah.
but then there's an hour in between. You all can come to the lake meeting.
Well, I
No, they can't.
think Matt's
Unless we
like
want to make it a public meeting.
a couple hours.
All right.
Okay,
It is
guess we
7.
close out the budget session.
I guess we could do
Now we begin the city council session.